Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at USAA.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we're going to take a deep dive into the San Francisco 49ers 2025 undrafted free agency class. Total of 6 players. Going to get into the good, the bad, and the potential that they can actually make the roster coming out of OTAs and preseason. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, give us that 5-star audio podcast review, and let's dive into it today on 49ers Access. Let's start things off with the one position this Niners regime has always been able to hit on with the undrafted free agency class, and that is the running backs. While San Francisco drafted one on day 3 with Jordan James out of Oregon, they also signed Cincinnati running back Corey Kiner as one of their top priority undrafted free agents. He's 5'9", 209 pounds, runs a 4.57 40-yard dash. In high school, he won Ohio's Mr. Football Award for Division V Offensive Player of the Year award with almost 1,900 yards and 35 rushing touchdowns. Over his last 2 seasons in high school, rushed for over 4,000 yards and sat out 34 quarters due to blowouts. Great high school athlete, great high school player. Because of his high school accolades, he committed to play at LSU, only there for a couple of years, but certainly made his name known when he transferred to Cincinnati and played for the Bearcats in 2022. He was a backup his first year at Cincinnati, rushed for about 362 yards, 5 touchdowns, and only 81 attempts. So you're seeing some of that good rushing attack, good contact balance, a good yards per carry rate over only 81 rushing attempts. But in 2023, that's when he became the full-time starter and really took off in his last 2 years at Cincinnati. Averaged over 200 carries, 1,000 yards, 4.5 yards per carry, and about 4.5 touchdowns per season over his last 2 years with the Bearcats, and 39 explosive runs in 2025 with Cincinnati. He's not going to be much of a receiver for you. Only 30 collegiate receptions on his name and 162 yards. So again, not going to be a great receiver for you, but has shown over his time at LSU in high school and certainly with Cincinnati that there's a little more than just undrafted free agent status to a player like Corey Kiner. If you follow The Athletic and Dan Brugler's work with the Beast, he is about a day 3, 6th round, 7th round pick. So San Francisco certainly found value as a UDFA with Corey Kiner. So with that said, let's dive into the strengths and his weaknesses here. His strengths, great contact balance. He fights through contact. He has natural leverage, again, 5'9" frame, smaller guy. He can fit through holes. He's someone that is never content just finding a place and going down. He wants to keep moving, keeps his legs turning and churning. He'll break through arm tackles. He's a downhill runner. Someone that you look at over Shanahan's near decade time in San Francisco, you scream Matt Breida, albeit with less speed. You talk about Tevin Coleman, albeit less speed. You talk about Elijah Mitchell. There's a archetype that Kyle Shanahan likes, and Corey Kiner certainly fits that as a UDFA this year. He's a player that never stops moving. Momentum's always there in the backfield, in between tackles, in wide zone runs. He's always moving his feet, moving his legs, moving his hips. He runs with the high knees, so he wants to break tackles. He's always, again, moving around. With his 1,147 rushing yards this past year at Cincinnati, 841 of those came after contact. So one guy is not going to bring them down. Now, bigger guys, bigger linebackers, they may take him down, but defensive linemen, guys trying to arm tackle him, good luck taking down Corey Kiner in the backfield. He's a patient runner. He's not going to get too overzealous. He's not going to just find a hole and try to fit himself in there. He'll wait for blocks to open up. He'll wait for his guards and tackles to create holes for him. And I really think that Kyle will love what Corey Kiner brings. Now, do I think, and one conversation often had with the UDFAs as well, whenever San Francisco drafts a running back or round 3, round 5, the guy that's undrafted beats him out in camp. I don't think Corey Kiner will be that type of player for San Francisco. However, I do think there is going to be a competition for that fourth running back slot. This team likes Patrick Taylor Jr. However, the odds he gets picked up by somebody if he is cut, he's a good practice squad player, good depth guy to have. I could see Corey Kiner walking into camp, as kind of the RB5, RB6, but leaving as the RB4 when it's all said and done. I think he gives you a little more than Patrick Taylor and Israel Abanikanda gives you as a depth piece. So there's a lot to like. And also, he is a bona fide zone runner. 413 zone run attempts over his time with the Bearcats and at LSU, and 140 gap attempts. So he's a pure zone runner, patient, always moving, head's always down, finding holes, patient guy. So you are finding, if you want to put it in kind of a weird way to compare a player already that was here, I think Elijah Mitchell screams that for this team. And Elijah Mitchell ended up being this team's leading rusher in 2021. Now, again, when you have Christian McCaffrey, you have Jordan James, you have Isaac Grendo, the odds that Corey Kiner can meet the expectations of the 2021 Elijah Mitchell aren't very high. However, I do think that Corey Kiner can make the roster. That said, there are some weaknesses there, and some pretty big ones, I may add. Again, smaller guys, so 5'9" frame. How long do those guys last in the NFL? Smaller running backs, their shelf life usually isn't that long. Obviously, you have some outliers here or there. You don't need guys that are 5'10", 5'11", but when you have guys that are 5'9" or only about 209 pounds, 200 pounds, you're not looking at a long NFL career. So how do you maximize Corey Kiner? Can he stay healthy over his time? He was healthy throughout the entire time at college, so there is no pre-existing injuries there. He's got fresh legs, no wear and tear thus far. But when you talk about the athletic side of him, he's not going to give you great long speed. He's not going to pull away from defenders very often. And you're not going to find this one-cut ability. He's not going to find a hole and say, boom, he's gone. That's Christian McCaffrey. That's Isaac Grendo. At times, that's Jordan James, but again, even then, his long speed comes into question. I do think that's where you get into the more Elijah Mitchell comps where it's like, hey, physical guy, head down, never stops moving, but likely isn't going to break away, 20, 30-yard runs downfield consistently for you in the backfield. One of the bigger issues I've seen with him is that he isn't a red zone runner. Throughout his time in college, only 3 red zone touchdowns. So, Jordan James walks into camp sitting back like, hey, I had 15 red zone touchdowns last year. All of my touchdowns came in the red zone. I'm the drive finisher, if you will. Corey Kiner's a guy that's like, I'll start drives for you. I can release somebody here or there. If you want to use that baseball term, he's the middle reliever, where you get to kind of the 45 to 45-yard line, comes in, gives you a rep or two, then you call it a day for him, or at least call it a drive for him. You bring Christian McCaffrey back in, use Garendo, then Jordan James finishes things off. So, again, only 3 red zone touchdowns, so not, again, a drive finisher in the backfield. There really is nothing in regards to a pass blocker. So the pass pro is certainly going to be an issue for him, as it is for most smaller running backs. So again, 5'9", the small frame coming into play for him. And he's not going to be a run blocker. I really don't see him being utilized in that way, but if he's asked to in any capacity, it's not going to be great. Again, 5'9", smaller guy. It's not that he doesn't try, he just can't. And he has almost no experience on special teams. So again, he's very pigeonholed into being an RB4 and RB3 in his career. And a big issue, and to me the biggest issue for him, it's one of the bigger reasons as to why I was not in on Jadon Blue, who went to the Cowboys out of Texas, or Bashal Tuten, who went, I don't know where, but to Virginia Tech out of this last draft class, is fumbles. Those guys combined for 9. Corey Kiner had 3 in 2025, or 2024, excuse me. So there is some concerns as to, do you have ball security? And we all know Kyle Shanahan. If you fumble, get rid of the football, and create turnovers as an offensive player, you're not going to stick around a long time. So I think Corey Kiner of this grouping is probably the closest to actually making the roster, simply based on who's in front of him and who I think he can actually surpass on the depth chart. But I really just don't really know, if he gets into camp and fumbles happen and there's turnovers and it's like, oh my God, the ball security is a problem, I can see him being a practice squad guy getting cut. But if he can clean that up, I do think there is, of the guys on this UDFA class, 6 of those guys, I think he has the best chance to make the roster of the 6. Moving along to the next offensive player, and maybe the most exciting player San Francisco picked up, that being wide receiver out of Nebraska, Isaiah, I believe it's Nayor, and he is a very perplexing, kind of, I don't want to say confusing, but there is this kind of looming of is there more than meets the eye? He may be a transformer, is what I'm kind of getting at. He's 6'4", 218 pounds. He has 4.4 speed. In 2019, committed to play at Wyoming, but didn't really do much until 2021. In 2021 at Wyoming, second-team All-Mountain Western Conference, played all 13 games, tied for the 8th in the FBS with 12 receiving touchdowns. So again, a big jump in a 2-year time span with Wyoming. I had 44 receptions for 878 yards. I think in the end, those 12 touchdowns. He was balling at Wyoming in 2021. Because of that, utilized it to go to the SEC and Texas in 2022, but during camp, he suffered a non-contact ACL injury. It cost him the entirety of 2022 and cost him almost the entirety of 2023, where he played 1 game. He's sitting back like, oh crap, Texas has all these great guys. Matthew Golden's in here. Isaiah Bond's in here. I don't have any playing time. He transfers again to Nebraska in 2024, plays 12 games last season, catches 34 passes for 455 yards and 5 touchdowns, leading the team. So there are some concerns with the injuries. There is a lot of inconsistent production, some really good, some injuries, and some average at best stuff, as a guy that did have a 6 to 7 round grade on his draft stock, but again, the injury concerns kind of drag him down a peg, but there are a lot of strengths to like from Isaiah Nayor out of Nebraska. Again, great size, 6'4", he has 4.4 speed. He is a physical mismatch based on paper. You see, wow, he's a big receiver, he runs 4.4. Those guys are hard to catch up to, hard to defend if you're a cornerback or a safety or even a linebacker, if that's the case. And on top of the 6'4" height and the 4.4 speed, he has 34 3/8 inch arms. He has longer arms than almost every single tackle in this year's class. This dude is just like one of those guys you put in a lab and say, give me one of your best receivers. He is a Madden creation when it comes to physical traits he has. Again, blazing speed, 4.4 speed, the height, the long arms. You say, wow, that catch radius. He should be able to go up and get it. He should be able to, beat any defender on him. And to a certain extent, that's true because he has that track background. He has long strides, 4.4 speed. He can stretch the field, get over the top, open up a space underneath for guys. He's got not the best blocker, but he has size. He'll take on people. He'll certainly try, but you want him to fix that technique, get a better anchor as a blocker. But even then, I know Kyle is a no block, no rock guy. He'll try. And you hope with time, he's one of those players to me that sits for 2 years on the practice squad, gets his body right, and hopefully can kind of be that 6th, 5th guy on your roster when it's all said and done. Or for a team that doesn't have anybody at wide receiver, my mind goes to the Chargers now. They have McConkey and other guys there, but teams that are more desperate, they have Trey Harris too, who was drafted this year, but teams that are like, hey, our receiver group isn't great, Nayor has the speed and the height and all this stuff, we'll fix the blocking later. I do think that can benefit him, but in regards to being in San Francisco, I think a 2-year kind of benching of, being in the doghouse per se may benefit him. And also a great thing about this is that this receiver class didn't have many true X wide receivers. He's one of them. He can play outside. And if you have to move him inside, be a bigger slot guy for you with the speed, go over the top of defenses. And a great thing about him is a lot of his catches last year. 24 of his 34 receptions last year at Nebraska in 2024 were over the middle of the football field, and he caught 2 touchdowns. So there really isn't. Some guys alligator arm stuff. Some guys are afraid to play over the middle through contact. Nayor is not one of those players. That said, there's a lot of drawbacks to a player like Isaiah Nayor out of Nebraska. When we talked about, edge rushers and defensive tackles, a lot of people, including myself, said you don't really want to gamble on no production. All traits, no production. It's the reason why some people, balked at Shamar Stewart. It's a lot of reasons why some people, although I think not to as large of an extent, are kind of like, really, Micah Williams, 4.5 sacks? Seriously? Isaiah Nayor fits in that box of receivers that didn't really have the production you want to become a, number 4, number 3 guy, despite the traits he has.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
He only has 87 collegiate receptions through 6 seasons. He missed 2 years due to injury, so even if you want to say 4 years of 87 receptions, it's not very good. He has 6'4", height, and he has a good frame, but he doesn't really fight through contact. You can knock him off his routes. You can push him off. You can kind of limit the speed he has, which is funny because when you see 6'4", 4'4" speed, you say, wow, this guy really should be able to beat defenders at ease. He doesn't know how to use his body. That's a concern. That certainly is a big drawback to him. And if you watched my Jordan Watkins review of day 3 of the draft for San Francisco, you heard this stat where it's like, wow, Jordan Watkins, for a guy that is only 5'11", doesn't really have this, one amazing trait, but he's really fast. The question was, can he catch? Danny Gray couldn't catch. Can Jordan Watkins catch? And I told everybody that his contested catch rate was above Colson Loveland's, who went number 10 overall to the Bears. Despite having a 6'4" frame and a 34 3/8 inch arm and catch radius, Isaiah Nayor has a 40.9 contested catch rate if you remove the one game he played in 2023 coming off the injury. That's an issue. That's a concern. He doesn't know how to use his body to box out guys, go up and get it. It's very much I am just out here roaming around, can you get it to me kind of player, which isn't always a bad thing, but when guys are that big, you want him to be able to box out dudes, and he really just can't do that. He also, the hands are not that bad, but he had 3 drops last year and his average 2 over the last 3 seasons. So there are some drop issues with him. And when you talk about 87 receiving or receptions in college, and you're averaging 2 drops a year, it's not a great thing for your draft stock. The route tree is also limited. He's not going to give you this, Brandon Ayuk, pure saw route tree. It's more limited stuff. Have him stop and go. He'll kind of be lackadaisical through his routes at times. Not going to be as crisp in and out of things. He'll round routes instead of cut in really quickly. And then, of course, the injury concerns. When you miss basically 2 years due to injury, and it's one torn ACL in 2022 and re-injuring the same knee in 2023. So for all the complaining about Curtis Rourke from my end, a lot of that comes down to Isaiah Nayor The only difference is he's a UDFA. There is no guarantees in his contract. So it's a low risk, maybe mediocre reward for a player like Nior, but he's got to sit. He has to get his body right. He almost needs to be taught. And a lot of that maybe is because when you miss 2 years of time, kind of catching yourself back up. So there is a world where 2 years removed from the injury, he looks better, looks faster, looks stronger than he looked last year at Nebraska. But it wasn't great last year. There's a reason why his draft stock wasn't great. But I think there may be a realm where, like Tariq Owens has taken, get into camp, learn the coaching staff, learn the roster, be here for 1 to 2, 3 years maybe. You can find yourself kind of sticking around. I think that's the path for Nior to make a roster, whether it's in San Francisco or elsewhere. But the hopes aren't high. But knowing San Francisco has like Russell Gage and Isaiah Hodgins and Tariq Owens and Trent Taylor, there may be room. Like, they kept Tay Martin forever on the roster. He could become your next Tay Martin, although Tay Martin knew how to go up and get it. Nior needs some practice and a lot of it. So maybe he's a pup guy. Maybe he's an IR guy for a year, get his knee right. So there really could be some opening. But again, there's drops concerns, injury concerns. It's going to take a long time for him to maybe make a roster anywhere, if he ever does. But he's a practice squad guy in year one, maybe. But maybe somewhere. I do want to pause here in the UDFA breakdown to say, what's up, Fluffy Ninja, on the YouTube chat. Tommy Huxley says, did you see Colin Cowturd's prediction? I did. Niners in last place. They certainly have some issues. We'll see what happens once the season begins and how they look during preseason. But to say last place for a team that still has this amazing offense, and it's a rather young defense, better coaching, and a much better special teams group last year. Don't forget, and I don't think we have, if this special teams unit was average, this team probably wins 2 more games last year. And they're, 8-9, and we're having a whole different conversation. So I saw it, I laughed and said, we'll see. Calachipto says here, I think fans are overhyping Kiner, or I'm looking forward to fans overhyping Corey Kiner. Hopefully he can beat out Taylor for the RB4 job. That is one thing I'm already seeing of Corey Kiner's going to beat out Jordan James for the RB2-3 job. It's like, no. And look, maybe, but the projections are not in the favor of that. But to your point, Calachipto, and to mine, I think that RB4 spot is certainly up for grabs, and I could see Corey Kiner grabbing it and saying, hey, it's my job now. And I think San Francisco would be more comfortable with Patrick Taylor being on the practice squad. And if someone goes down, or if they need some special teams help somewhere, he can be in elevation week by week. So kind of be utilized as that Trent Taylor, but the running back room. I can see that the case. Mr. Joe says, what's up with the waves? Mr. Joe, hope you're having a great Wednesday afternoon. And Robash 49ers says, hey, Sterling, how many rookies do you think start for us this year? So Micah Williams will start, likely on day 1. Alfred Collins will start. Let's think. Nick Martin could start. I think there's a way that happens. I'm seeing a lot of people start him over D. Winters on their depth charts. I don't think that's the case, but through a 17-game season, inevitably, I do think that Nick Martin could find his way as a starter, kind of be that third linebacker. I think being the Azeez Al-Shire, if you want to use that comparison for 1 year, is that, be a blitzer linebacker. So if you want to call that a starter, you can maybe pitch me on that, but on base downs, he shouldn't be out there. At least that's my opinion. Then there's CJ West isn't going to start probably day 1. I think they want him to be kind of a base down player, be a good run stuffer, then take him out. So it really does depend on how you view CJ West. I think he can be a great player. He got an A+ in my draft grades. But I don't think he'll start simply because they do want him to upgrade the pass rush plan he currently has in the move. So I won't say CJ West will start. I don't think Upton Stout will start or Marquise Siegel. I think their secondary will be, Lenore, Trey Brown, Green. Then they'll have Jair Brown. Then they'll have probably Jason Pinnock until Mustafa gets back. Then they'll rotate some of those guys in and out here or there. Jordan Watkins, it seemingly he's not going to play, even if Ayuk and Robinson are suspended or injured to begin the year. So I think a doghouse year for him, that feels like that's on the table, but we'll see how he looks during preseason and training camp and whatnot. Jordan James, I think, actually could see a lot of playing time this year because they need him. Like, that's a big thing. Like, they need him to play. So, penciled in, I think 3 of them will probably start at a certain point. But that's kind of it. Like, Connor Colby's not going to start. Curtis Rourke's not going to start. Like, maybe Junior Burgeon starts as like a kick returner, but I think 3 guys make the most sense. Their first 3 picks could be that. Other than that, I don't think they will. Other than that, I also wouldn't have high expectations for guys on day 3. Like, at least myself, I want to temper those. I do think this team's roster is pretty filled out. And the holes they had on the defensive line, albeit I think they could have found some other guys in there, like, a pass rusher on the defensive tackle position. I think they kind of filled everything they needed. So I would say 3 of them. Diamond, I'm assuming it's Diamond D @LBC says, any UDFAs you wish we would have signed? Yes. I wish we would have signed Sean Dolak, linebacker from Buffalo. He goes to the Rams. I think Willie Lampkin, guard from UNC, also went to the Rams. So that's 2 guys I would have loved to have signed. Then there was Jared Ivey, kind of a edge rusher, defensive line, interior guy hybrid. He went to the Seahawks. So that's 2 of them. Maybe Nick Nash. I think he went to the Falcons. I think. Maybe I'm wrong there. Other than that, there wasn't really anybody that I was like, oh, you got to have him. I think they did a pretty good job. Again, there were some picks I didn't love, but other than that, like, I think of the grouping, those 3 guys, Jared Ivey, Sean Dolak, Willie Lampkin, those 3 guys make the most sense to me. Bit a need for San Francisco, but they brought in Drew Moss. They drafted Connor Colby. It's kind of pick your poison there. They drafted Nick Martin. Maybe Sean Dolak was kind of a whatever pick. They went and signed Stone Blanton, who we'll get in here in a second about. But those are kind of the 3 top dogs for me. I at least would have looked at as UDFAs. And Joseph coming in hot says, Sterling, I think Brock will be the MVP this season. Niners go 15-2 and win the Super Bowl 35-13. Brock is regular season MVP and Super Bowl MVP. Pump the brakes. I love the optimism after a lot of negativity this offseason, but I'll say I hope, I wish, fingers crossed it happens. It'll certainly make that probably $200+ million deal he gets this offseason worth it, and we'll all say forget the conversation of he's carried, but I'm going to say no to that, but I would love it to happen. I do think you will see a better Brock Purdy. There was a post today by San Francisco of Brock Purdy throwing checkdowns to Christian McCaffrey. And I was like, hey, if he has a checkdown back, who knows what's going to happen this season? It certainly was an issue last year for them and Brock, just not trusting guys underneath, mainly Jordan Mason. So fingers crossed. Fingers crossed that's the case. And Lori says, I can buy into that. I hope. And Kawachipto, back with the negativity, says, the league will never let Brock win the MVP. They'll never select him. It would be a slap in the face to a lot of people if Brock won the MVP. But if Brock wins a Super Bowl, like that almost happened. That's kind of not the same, but like he was a finalist. Now, he shouldn't have won it, and he didn't for good reasons, but he was a finalist, and he almost won a Super Bowl. So I do think maybe. And Joseph says here in the last comment of the pausing of the UDFA conversation says, realistically, what do you expect from San Francisco this year, record-wise and playoff-wise? I think San Francisco having the easiest schedule, I think, in the NFL, or at least of the NFC West opponents, I think they can win 10 games next year. I think that's feasible. I think 10-7, whatever it is now, 10-7, right? 10-7. Be a wild card team, fight for the playoffs. I think San Francisco this year, everybody wanted to compare last season because of the injuries and, they're going to find their way back into it somewhere. Wanted to compare last year to 2021 when they were 3-5 and they fought their way back and they beat the Rams in week 17 and they beat the Packers and all that stuff. Beat the Cowboys in the playoffs. I think this year could feel more like that season where they go into the wild card team and they go, hey, watch out for San Francisco. So I think 10-7 is a good record for them. There'll be injuries here or there. They always happen, but they did feel some depth roles for themselves. I think they are opening up room to make a trade here or there to come during the season to maximize. Like, I know fans say it's a reset, it's a rebuild, and all that to some degree is true. However, you're not telling Kyle Shanahan that. You're not telling John Lynch that. They view with Brock and McCaffrey and Trent and returning Brandon Ayuk and Demarcus Robinson and Jawan Jennings and Lenore and the defense and Warner and Bosa and, Micah Williams and Alfred Collins and those guys. Like, I think San Francisco will be in the mix a lot of the year. They just kind of laid down and died for a variety of reasons, mainly injuries last year. But they also, they took it to the Lions late in the season. Like, they showed the Lions have holes and, for as banged up as we are and for not having Ayuk and having a bad Deebo Samuel, like, Ricky Pearsall took off in that game and George Kittle's still great. So I think 10-7 is a good record for them. And I think should be able to compete for the Rams for the division. Watch out for Seattle, though. I know a lot of fans don't love me saying that, and look, they certainly have quarterback problems. I don't really trust Sam Darnold by any means, and their offensive line still has some holes. But I think Seattle can surprise some people. They got a good defense over there, and I think they're trying to fix things up. And I really wouldn't be shocked that if Stafford goes down, it's Seattle and San Francisco vying for the NFC West again. So 10-7 is where I'll stand for now. And if things change or something drastic happens, we can certainly open up that conversation again. But great question, and I'm happy to answer it for you. Moving along, though, back into the UDFA conversation, the offensive line got addressed in the 7th round with Connor Colby, and they did it again with the UDFA, that being offensive lineman Drew Moss out of Colorado State. 6'3", 303 pounds, 32 1/8-inch arms, short for a tackle, relatively average for a guard. Started 22 games at right tackle for FCS Lamar, then transferred to Colorado State, played right tackle in 2023. They kicked him inside in 2024, where he became a second-team All-Mountain West offensive lineman. In regards to strengths, he's a high-end athlete. I know a lot of people were screaming, get a guard, get a tackle. And yes, I think they got burned by the Raiders twice in round 3 at pick 100, or in front of pick 100, but Shanahan being super particular about his offensive linemen, and Chris Forrester being the same way, Drew Moss does fit what they want to do as guards and tackles, although I think he is going to be a center and guard at the NFL level. The RAS score was just off the charts. He was elite when it comes to 40-yard dash, 20-yard split, 10-yard split, shuttle time, 3-cone, vertical, and broad jump. The dude is an athlete, to quote David Spade from Benchwarmers. He just is that kind of player. He wants to get out and get into space, and he can move, and he can be the puller and all that stuff. And funny enough, for a lot of the balking and a lot of the issues fans had of not getting a tackle and a guard, the 2 guards San Francisco got, Connor Colby being the 9th best zone run blocker in this draft class per PFF. Drew Moss is the second best graded zone run blocker in this entire class per PFF with a 92.5 zone run blocking grade. So for all the complaining, which to a certain extent justified, they got a guy that really fits their scheme and what they want to do, and can be the athlete Kyle wants. Also, through 4 collegiate seasons, only allowed 4 sacks. So, and that's playing guard and tackle, despite having short arms. Like, when you have 32 1/8-inch arms, guys that have 33-inch arms are like, oh, they got short arms, can't do it. he held up.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Pretty competently at right tackle and right guard. He also is a player that when you talk about a Niner offensive line, finishing blocks, having the grit, having that I want to run through somebody mentality, Drew Moss has that as a run blocker. That said, there's a lot of weaknesses here. When you have short arms, it's going to be an issue for you. There's technical issues with his, the way he has his hand strikes. With shorter arms, you can't reach that far. Guys are going to get into your chest faster. You're going to be opened up to bull rushes and stronger defensive tackles and edge rushers at the NFL level. And when you have short arms and guys get around you, what do? Tend to grab onto pads and face masks, and you try to get a hold of guys and not let go and say, hey, I'll get called for holding compared to 15-yard sack or whatnot. So got called for 17 flags over the last 2 seasons. So again, shorter arms are a big issue. Guys getting into his chest, inconsistent hand strikes. And I think, for being a UDFA and for all the good things he can do for you and all the, the athletic traits he has and, the stats he has and, the zone run blocking grades that he has, I think anything more than projecting him to be a reserve depth piece is, that's kind of what he is. He's not going to be a starter for you at the NFL level. He's not going to give you this amazing season and become this amazing player. There's a lot of work to be done. Now, does he fit the mold of a Kyle Shanahan offensive lineman more than, say, some of Logan Brown from Kansas? Of course he does. But there's so much rawness there. There's so much you don't really fit the mold of an NFL player. And I think, a lot of fans are screaming to replace Jake Brendel. Jake Brendel set for a long time in Miami as a backup. I do think that there is a path for Drew Moss, if he's going to make the roster, to play center. This team seemingly likes Nick Zakelj and Matt Hennessy as guards. Shanahan said as much during the owners' meeting. So I think that if Drew Moss slides inside and plays center, there's a path to be a backup at the NFL level. And I think sitting behind people like Jake Brendel, for all the bad things he does, he's a smart guy. He knows the position pretty well. And you avoid the shorter arms if you get him with guards on the interior. It alleviates the pressure of guys going towards his edge, going towards his back shoulder. He's in front of everybody. The play's in front of him. So I think there is a better projection at center compared to guard and tackle at the NFL level for a player like Drew Moss. There isn't a lot to like, but there's enough to like to say, hey, get him in camp, have him sit for a year or two, be a practice squad player. Whenever they want to get off Jake Brendel, maybe give him a chance here or there. I can see that being the case, but Drew Moss just doesn't scream, oh, wow, he'll be a 10-year vet, he'll be a 5-year vet, or he'll even start for you one day. He's that depth guy that he plugs and plays and you say, God, I hope this works out. But again, there is some zone run blocking you like. There is some mentality you like, but there's a lot that has to get fixed for him to come and be a starting caliber player at the NFL level. Before we go to the defense, though, I want to pause to let you and remind you that you can use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERS, ACCESS at SeatGeek.com, and you can save yourself $20 off your first purchase. The Warriors are in the NBA playoffs. The Giants are in full swing. You want to go to a concert or even pre-order Niner tickets, go to SeatGeek.com, use that promo code, and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Parking is expensive. Beer is expensive. Food is expensive. Everything is expensive when you want to go to a sporting event or a concert. So any way you can save yourself some money is the best way. Use that promo code and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Okay, let's get to the defense. because I do think there is a way and a potential where one of these guys could make the roster, whether it's practice squad or maybe outright in camp. Let's start things off with defensive tackle Sebastian Valdez from UW. He's a Washington Husky, 6'3", 301 pounds. He played 3 seasons at Montana State, earning first team Big Sky in 2022 and second team Big Sky in 2023. In 2022, 24 tackles, 25 defensive stops, that being plays of negative or 0 yards, 7.5 sacks playing on the interior. In 2023, 17 tackles, 19 defensive stops, and 5 sacks. After that season, goes to Washington via the transfer portal in 2024. Last season at UW, 35 tackles, 29 defensive stops, and 2 sacks. He's a player that has natural leverage, being 6'3", he's a low anchor, massive hands. He'll take on double teams. He'll fill space for you. He's a guy that, you look at and say, you are kind of pigeonholed into one role if you want to be an NFL player. He's not going to be a great pass rusher for you. He doesn't have the swim moves. He doesn't have the swipes. He just has big, bulky arms and a strong upper body and a thick trunk. And he'll utilize that to his strength, which leads to a really good 74.8 run defense grade on average over the last 3 seasons. So again, there is some things to like from him. I can see him being a practice squad player and kind of being an elevation if someone goes down. Say if Jordan Elliott or Kalia Davis or Evan Anderson goes down, I can see Sebastian Valdez being a piece involved. But I do think, with not having a pass rush plan, you then kind of become a base down player or a goal line player, which I don't think he can do that just yet, at least. And I don't project him to be that kind of player. And I think when you don't have a pass rush plan, you don't have spins and swims and swipes to get to the quarterback, it does limit what you can do at the NFL level. However, every team needs run stuffers, so there is value to a player like Sebastian Valdez. He has shorter arms, so yes, he's kind of compact. He's a stronger player, but he has shorter arms. He's not going to be able to stack and shed, which comes into his pass rush attack again. He's not going to get a guy, throw him around and say, hey, I'm at the quarterback, gonna get a sack or a pressure. He isn't that player. He also isn't an athlete. He's, we talked a lot about, Walter Nolan being super twitchy and have all these traits. Sebastian Valdez, I'm not comparing the two here, but he is a very much just a simple, non-twitchy, non-athletic, just get in there and plug a hole and call it a day kind of player. Now, if he can get stronger and he can get more stout and get his body right and add some maybe 20 pounds to his frame, you then start to have the conversation of, okay, maybe he can be a stout run defender at the NFL level, but that's going to take some time. And I think you're talking about a player that, that may take 3-4 years to get that down. So I can see him being a practice squad player for San Francisco, but with what they have, needing depth, that's kind of the path to take. Like, hey, we need some depth on the defensive line. However, I think San Francisco needs more depth when it comes to pass rushing, which Valdez doesn't do very well. Moving on to maybe a lot of people's favorite player of the UDFA class, not named Corey Kiner. That is linebacker Stone Blanton out of Mississippi State. Certainly has the best name of the UDFA class. If your name is Stone, I mean, come on. You got to be laying dudes out. You got to be, I don't want to say rock hard. That's not the verbiage I want to use, but you better be strong dude, cut out, ripped, just rocking dudes when they come over the middle and in coverage and ball carriers. But he's 6'2", 230 pounds, so a smaller frame. He's kind of jacked. He's a stronger guy. He's a 2-year starter at inside linebacker with South Carolina in 2023 and 2024 with Mississippi State. If you want to go back all the way to 2022, 3 years ago, can't believe it's 3 years ago at this point. Started 33 consecutive games, so he's healthy. He plays every single game, whether he's starting, whether he's just a reserve player. He's out there. He loves football. But this past season at Mississippi State was by far his best year. 124 tackles, a 12.3% missed tackle rate, 31 defensive run stops, 2 forced fumbles, 3 pass deflections, and a tremendous 86.4 run defense grade. To give you an idea, of the linebacker class that ranks 11th, which isn't bad by any means, it's pretty good, near the top 10. However, a lot of the guys, mainly Chris Paul Jr., or Pooh Paul if you want to use his nickname, Jahad Campbell, who was a first-round pick, Demetrius Knight, who a lot of fans wanted, Stone Blanton was a better run defender than all 3 of those guys. So you're getting a player that maybe can fight his way up on the roster, be the linebacker 4 or 5 if Curtis Robinson isn't healthy or Bethune can't kind of grow into his role in year 2, or Nick Martin has some issues, or even D. Winters gets hurt. Stone Blanton does have a trait you like, mainly a run defender. That said, he only, in my opinion, of what I've gone through thus far of his tape and his film and his stats, highly instinctual, disciplined player. He's not going to miss tackles, not going to overrun, ball carriers. He's there. He has good awareness. He'll shade back in his own coverage. He'll get a PBU here or there. He's a smart guy. He knows how to play the linebacker position. That's necessary at the NFL level. And if you can maximize your high IQ, you can overcome some of your physical weaknesses or detriments, if you will. And there's a lot of them. He's not a great athlete. He doesn't track, ball carriers down from behind. He doesn't have the speed. He's not going to go from one sideline to the other. He's not that kind of player. He doesn't have, short area gap agility. He'll miss tackles there. He doesn't possess, this amazing strength to leverage his gap and, push off guys and stack and shed blockers. He's not going to do that either. There are really no upside when it comes to a blitzer. So Nick Martin, picked 75 this year by San Francisco. Tremendous blitzer. He'll find the hole, shoot through it, get to the quarterback, and stop the run. Stone Blanton, he gets there, gets to the gap, here's a defender, and just boom, brick wall. So the name Stone could maybe mean that as a blitzer, he's getting Stonewall Jackson by a defender or by an offensive player. And you're like, man, you have all this momentum. You have all this 230 pounds behind you, and boom, as a blitzer, there's nothing of force behind it. So he's a high IQ player, and I think that the athletic traits he doesn't possess maybe can be overcome with the high IQ that he has. There is one thing I do want to point out, though. Last year, San Francisco gave Evan Anderson $130,000 to be a guaranteed contract. This year, I think their only guaranteed, or the biggest guarantee they had, was Stone Blanton at $92,000 in guaranteed money. So there seems to be somewhat of a belief that he'll be a practice squad player for you, and if somebody goes down, he's the first guy up. I do think they like the ability as a run defender a lot, and the high IQ comes into play, but there's so much that Saleh loves with his linebackers, and Blanton doesn't really fit that mold. He loves those wiry, just, if you want to kind of compare it to an animal, he loves the hyena, the lion that has his head in the swivel saying, who do I get to hit next? Who do I get to, go tackle next? And guys that want to go from, one pylon to the other, one sideline to the other, Blanton's not that. So it's an interesting move. I do wonder that if they like his special teams upside on punts, on kicks, on whatever he may do for Brant Boyer's group. But as a potential, if you want to get into what his projection may be, I don't really think there's a place for him as a starter at the NFL level, as most of these guys aren't going to be their UDFAs for a reason, mind you. But I just don't see the high upside that some people do. I think there's a high IQ player that can play for you, can be a guy that plays, a long time in the NFL, but doesn't really become a a starter, primarily a special teamer. I think that's the route for him. which every team needs. But I think the guaranteed money there, $92,000 guaranteed, is a big sign that they like him a lot, and he's a priority for them to bring in. The next guy, the final guy of the group, is defensive back, cornerback / maybe safety, Jakob Robinson from BYU. 5'10", 181 pounds, ran a 4.39 40-yard dash. There was some reports that he was told it was a 4.37, so however you want to put that, maybe 4.4, who knows. But 4.39 is the official score he got with the 40-yard dash. And I know this because he told me this. He turned down offers from the Dolphins, the Lions, and the Ravens to join San Francisco. They were talking about maybe drafting him on day 3. That didn't happen, obviously. Board didn't fall his way, but there was a lot of talks with Jakob Robinson in San Francisco leading into the draft and after the draft. Obviously, he signed with San Francisco for a reason. In 2020, he started at Utah State, then transferred to BYU in 2021. And fast forward all the way to 2024, was a team captain last year, was all Big 12 second team at BYU in 2024. And in 2023, he was a Jim Thorpe Award finalist, which is the best defensive back in college award. So you can see the potential and the skill you are playing with when it comes to somebody like Jakob Robinson.
This message is brought to you by Abercrombie Kids, where the activewear is made for every summer activity, so your mini-me can bring their personal best. Summer days are always an adventure, from day camp to rec leagues and pool days. Abercrombie Kids has the shorts, tees, and swim to keep them comfy and keep up with them. Get everything for the entire summer at Abercrombie Kids. Shop in-store, online, or in the app.
And there's a lot to like from the exterior. He has incredible ball skills. He had 11 interceptions and 17 PBUs while in college. That's insane. Like, that is incredible. I think he was like 5th all-time in active FBS players with interceptions. So now that he's leaving college, he's off the record book, but leaving college, he had the 5th most, I believe, interceptions in the FBS through his time at BYU and Utah State. So again, all great ball skills, always somehow finds a way to get his head and his hands near the ball. The last couple of years in coverage, a 68.5 passer rating allowed, so he's knocking passes down. You're not seeing guys beat him too often. He can play inside, he can play outside, he can play safety at times. So you're getting a versatile defensive player, which goes back into the Upton Stout and Marquis Siegel conversation of guys Salah likes that can play inside, outside, and safety. So someone that you can see kind of finding his place in the NFL somewhere. Is kind of the last guy on the depth chart, be kind of the last man standing, if you will, in a defensive back room. He has a really quick back pedal. He has fluid hips, and with the frame he has as a boundary defender, he knows how to use it to his advantage. So, again, a lot to like for a player like Jakob Robinson. There's a highlight on, I think that he posted on X or Twitter, that he's tracking guys down from behind in the red zone or in the end zone, and he's just looking around, and he's one-handed interceptions, and you're like, what the heck? Like, that was awesome. Like, these are highlights you want to see from guys that are trying to make a roster, fringe guys that are saying, hey, just give me a chance. And knowing he turned down offers from 3 other teams, that has to give you some kind of sign that they like him a lot. Now, that said, he's not somebody you want as a cornerback playing in man coverage much. You don't really want him out there on an island. There is no Revis Island in sight. It is like, oh my God, let's not go over there in man coverage. But he's much more consistent in zone coverage as a cornerback. The build isn't great. Again, you're 5'10", 181 pounds. You'd like him to be closer to 195, 190, put on 10 pounds of muscle and whatnot. He's not going to play man coverage. He doesn't have that physical, mentality. He's not going to go against, bigger, stronger receivers. He's not going to jam guys on, at the line of scrimmage. That's not who he is. He's a kind of, play back a little bit, zone coverage player, kind of the off-zone coverage player, and let things come to him compared to taking receivers head on, where, you have guys like Lenore and Bernardo Green that can play in press coverage. Jakob Robinson's not that whatsoever. As a run defender, which we know this team covets and needs out of their secondary pieces, knowing they're playing, base nickel a lot of the times, there's a really inconsistent tackling technique with him that's led to a 15.6% missed tackle rate in his entire career at college. Now, last year, he got it to a career low, being 10%, so there is some improvement there. Maybe there was some growth this past season at BYU, but the tackling technique it's a lot to desire, or leaves a lot to desire for you. He's really choppy when he breaks down. There's a lot of flat feet. He'll take bad angles towards balls. Again, there isn't much strength there. And there are times I do question the willingness to attack bigger ball carriers, because I do think there is some kind of this I need to preserve my body. I'm 5'10", 181 pounds. I'm not going to tackle Derrick Henry. It's just not going to happen. And I do think that when you have Jakob Robinson out there, which is why I do think he projects to be more of a safety, put him at safety, utilize those ball skills, utilize that speed, let him roam around, let him, again, be a ball hawk for you. I think that is a better projection for him at the NFL level. Get him away from press man coverage. Again, utilize that zone coverage skills he has, and kind of limit the run defending he needs to have, or let him get his body right, and you can fix his technique as a safety compared to a cornerback. So I really like Jakob Robinson when it comes to the ball skills, the interceptions, the PBUs, and the pass deflections, but there's some tackling concerns I have. There's some weight concerns. I think he's going to be a safety, and I think he should be at the NFL level, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of what they tried to do with Taylor Hawkins, who came in, sat for a couple years, was that practice squad player. Someone goes down, put him on special teams. He has speed. But even then, again, the tackling technique, you don't really want that guy on special teams for you. So it'll be interesting to see. I do think there is a lot of boom and bust with Jakob Robinson, hence why I put him at safety. I do think you can find a lot more of that boom compared to a bust type player, but these are all UDFAs. These guys, the odds they make the team are so slim. I know we've kind of grown accustomed to guys making the roster. Jordan Mason was one who was a great player for San Francisco the past couple of years. Evan Anderson last year got playing time. Matt Breida was one of those guys as well. So there is belief. Brock Purdy was a borderline UDFA for what we're talking here. So there is some belief that one of these guys, maybe two of these guys, can make the roster. If I were to say who, I'd probably say somebody like Corey Kiner, running back. He'll be the RB4 probably going into the season. I think he can beat out Patrick Taylor Jr. And I think a player like Stone Blanton, who has, the guaranteed money and a good run defense, I think those two guys of the six are kind of the two top dogs, if you will. But I really, really cannot wait to watch Jakob Robinson in camp and in OTAs and in preseason if he actually makes it that far. Because I do think there is something in there that can make sense. He's got a good family. 5 or 6 brothers and sisters, a big family. You could tell they support him. I was talking to his brother on extra Twitter a couple days ago. They are just hyped. He's going to be at minicamp or rookie minicamp starting on Friday and Saturday. So I think all these guys will. But there's a lot to like here from the UDFA class. I know last year Cody Schrader was here and they cut him and the Rams got him. So you're kind of hoping that the guys you like can go through waivers, and we'll have to wait and see what happens during preseason. But tell me down below, of the UDFA San Francisco brought in, who do you like, who do you believe in the most, and who do you think I talked about and discussed and kind of dissected today do you think can actually make the roster in 2025? Don't forget to leave that like, share, subscribe. Give us that 5-star audio podcasting review. And you can follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. And use that promo code 49ersaccess49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. I want to thank Fluffy Ninja, Tommy Huxley, Kyle Chipto, Mr. Joe, Ro Bash 49er, Diamond D at LBC, Lori Matthews, Joseph Ernberg, and Bobo. All you guys right here on the YouTube chat, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you like, share, subscribe, leave that review, and as always, my name is Sterling Bennett, and until next time, stay faithful.